Hello, and thank you all for joining us for This Week in VulnDB. This is a show that looks at some of the latest vulnerabilities from open source ecosystems, open source language and also project ecosystems from, around the world. My name is Developer Steve, and usually I'm joined here today by my co-host Vandana, who hopefully will be along shortly. Anyway, thank you so much for joining us again. This is a weekly show, and we will be going through the vulnerability database today, but also looking at some of the more recent emergences? Yeah, that's a word. Some of the more recent emergings like Spring4shell, but we'll get to that in a little bit. If you haven't yet joined us on our Discord, I'm just going to grab the link. If you haven't yet joined us on our Discord, we would love to chat to you there. And we're always looking to connect to people either through the chat on Twitch or YouTube, depending where you're watching this. Or if you're watching the recording, please join us also on Discord, which I'm just putting the link in now. There it goes there. So we would love to chat, love to hear some of the vulnerabilities that you've had in or you've seen in the wild, that you've experienced maybe, or that you've found and fixed. Always looking to connect. I think I'm being joined by Vandana. I am being joined by Vandana. Hello, Vandana.
Hey, how are you? I'm so excited to be here again.
Amazing. So good to have you here. I was just telling everyone about our amazing Discord and how we always love chatting to people there. So I've already put,
absolutely.
Those that haven't joined yet, please join us on Discord. We would love to. Yep, there it is on the screen. Also, just quickly, also wanted to mention DevSecCon call for papers is still open for one more week. So please make sure if you're looking to get a talk in, there we go there. Just posted that in the chat too. If you're looking to get a talk in and have something to share with people on anything DevSecOps related, we would love to hear from you, and please get those talks in. Also, tickets are open too. So if you want to hear from some amazing folks that, they are submitting the CFPs because we're currently reviewing them, grab a ticket and connect with the community.
Absolutely, and we are looking forward to hearing from you. So please do fill on the CFP, as well as Steve and I are part of the team who are going to be checking the papers. Please do submit the wonderful papers. We're looking forward to your talk.
Yeah, and if you're, you go.
I was just saying that if you need any help, you're scared that what will happen, we are there to help you out. We would be there to mentor you, even in your CFP. You just fill out, tell us that this is what you need. We would be there to help you out.
You totally read my mind. That is literally what I was about to say as well. And if you're a first-time speaker, we would love to work with you as well. So, but any questions, please reach out to one of us on, just about anywhere there's a social media platform. Or through the Discord. Yeah, join the Discord. Reach out to us on there. We are on there. So anyway, should we have a look at some vulnerabilities?
Oh, yes, absolutely. Our coffee conversation, which is getting delayed to our lunch.
It's true with the daylight savings changes. Actually, the first one I want to mention is one we talked about two shows ago, and if you haven't seen our past shows, they're on the Snyk YouTube and Twitch, so check those out as well. But this one was from 2 episodes ago, where I talked about DOM PDF, the PDF open source library creator, and the really bad vulnerability. So since then, there's been a bit of development because I actually reverse shelled it after being on Vuns Unleashed, which is one of the other shows on the Snyk YouTube and Twitch. Hacker Kyle, hi Kyle, actually suggested it potentially could be turned into a reverse shell, which I did and then submitted a CVE for, which is currently in pending approval, and that is the CVE there. I'm just going to say this is my first CVE, and I'm pretty kind of weirdly excited about that because it was an interesting process to go through. I'm totally writing a blog about it. But anyway, I just wanted to mention it because it's my first CVE. I'm kind of excited. Anyway, the code for that is sitting on the Snyk GitHub as well. So if you did want to check it out and maybe validate my CVE, anyone out there? But yeah, the write-up for this is actually on the, let me make that a bit bigger. on the PHP Goof app on the Sneaker Labs GitHub. Actually, let me post the link if anyone wanted to give that a try. But yeah, you can use that vulnerability to create a reverse shell on a server. So yeah, that one is really bad. Anyway, I just wanted to mention that because there've been further developments. And speaking of developments, whoops, got a menu up. We've had an interesting week with one in particular, Spring4shell. Have you been tracking the developments with this one, Vandana?
Absolutely, Steve. This is something which is amazing. Yeah, absolutely. Now, again, this is one of those remote code executions which is creating a lot of buzz. Like we were talking about Log4j and so many other vulnerabilities. And now this is creating a buzz. Let's go ahead and deep dive into it. How about you talk us through Spring4shell, what exactly it is, and then I can explain more about remote code execution and how it is impacting this vulnerability.
Yeah, sounds good. I'm actually just going to post. So we've got 2 blog write-ups on this one because this one was interesting, and we talked a little bit about it last week. So this kind of surfaced pretty early in some community groups, which is normally like how these bigger vulnerabilities start to surface. Oh, one of the links didn't post. There you go. So this vulnerability did start to surface in some social media networks. We started to see some chatter on it, and then which is what this first post is about. And then Brian Vermeer actually did a really good deep dive with some of our security researchers, sort of talking in a lot more depth on what it does, how it works, and well, down to the code level, which is really cool. Let me post that link. Let's see if this one goes through. Hey, there we go. So this one's probably the more comprehensive.
Don't worry.
Yeah. Okay. This blog write-up goes into a lot more depth, including and yeah, this starts to go into like the serialization side of things in the Java framework that this basically surfaced in. And then also looking at some of the demo. Well, there's a demo aspect on sort of digging into it some more. But yeah, you can see there's a full POC and a GitHub if you wanted to play with this a little more as well. The thing that I think got everyone rattled a bit on this one, rattled, excited, interested, scared, all the things. I don't know, is there a word for all the emotions? Whatever it is, this was that. I think what everyone was really concerned about was that it was another Log4j emerging again, which, well, as we know, caused a lot of issues in the internet ecosystems everywhere. Well, particularly the JVM, obviously, because there was quite the fallout. But yeah, as you can see, it's another remote code execution, which, well, they're particularly scary vulnerability types, aren't they, Vandana?
Absolutely, they are. And I've been reading about the Spring4shell, wherein even if you are using the minimalistic or you're just loading it from somewhere or executing it into the memory, you are vulnerable to it because it uses serialization. Now, remember one thing, when there is a vulnerability that exists in your ecosystem, it does not happen just because there's an object which is getting parsed inside the memory. No, it is because there are certain more things which are part of your ecosystem which are leading to another vulnerability. Now, when input is being taken, I always say that input validation is the must. And sometimes what happens is that people try and use the serialization issues. Java underlying use serialization to map the objects. When that happens, I can actually take input and then start remotely executing the code. It'll be fun for me because these are some things which are very, very common to use. But then when people start exploiting, it is fun. Like, especially with this remote for shell. Like, this became a big thing because it's being part of Spring framework, and a lot of people use this. And especially if you're using JDK version 9 or later, and you're using Spring Framework version 5.3.0 to 5.3.17, 2.0, 2.19, and even older versions are vulnerable. And it is so easy to exploit this. Now, how does that happen? So the exploitation of this vulnerability mainly relies on the endpoint, which are actually if you're using data binder or you have data binder enabled, because that will decode the data from the request automatically. Now another thing is that if the data is decoded automatically, if I am an attacker, I can leverage Spring4shell against the vulnerable application. Like my friend said that with DOM PDF, there was a vulnerability, and he was able to do the reverse shell, and he submitted a CV. Similarly, this, in fact, if we talk about Spring Framework class binder, it talks about that yes, we should be very, very cautious about it, and there has to be data validation. It is not like they have not mentioned it, it's there in the documentation. Now, there are certain security implications if we don't map it, or if we don't validate these arrays objects, which is mapping. Another important aspect is that how exactly you can work through it. So we've been talking about these vulnerabilities, but remember to patch it. So Spring Framework 5.3.18 and 2.20 that contain the fixes have been already released. Let's go ahead and upgrade these frameworks to these updated versions. And if you think about workarounds, like we always think of, oh, is there a workaround? There is no workaround. No workarounds are necessary for this one. Let's patch it. And if you cannot update to the latest Spring framework, or you cannot upgrade it, so what we can do is we can use Apache Tomcat 10.0.20, 9.0.62, and there's another version, 8.5.78, which can provide certain protection for it. Now, I am sure that you want to understand. So Snyk has come up with the awesome log4shell, like we did for log4shell. So Spring4shell list, where we've listed everything, what this vulnerability is all about, what the framework is all about, because till the time you don't know the framework, you cannot use it. But for the people who use it, developers who use it, they will understand. Another thing is there's a POC. My friend has mentioned on the screen that Kirill from our team, from the research team, has prepared a POC. It's a tongue twist. Prepared a POC which you can try, understand what this vulnerability is all about. Because for me, I don't understand a bug till that I might get my hands dirty on it. So you can check it out, you can try it, and this is one of the vulnerabilities which will give you an edge. Okay, injections are here to stay; they're not going to go away at all.
Actually, funny you should mention serialization because, well, I don't know that serialization or unserialization is good in any framework. So please make sure you're using. Using JSON strings is far more safer in most cases. I'm going to say in most cases because there may not be some case where you probably don't want to do that, but it's a relatively safer format than serialization. I know we've got a number of write-ups about this on the Snyk blog too. So please be very, 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 very careful if you even contemplating using serialization or unserialization. And in most cases, there's the opportunity for a stored function or a function to be stored in memory, which can then later be executed, which makes it, well, really bad. So actually, I think I'm going to play some music for that one. Serialization.
Yeah,
there we go.
And Steve, think of it as like I'm using a framework and I don't know about that framework, what exactly is in that framework. I know that we are using huge amount of open source packages, but let's start understanding some of them which we are using day in and day out, and document it. I think in every session we talk about documentation. Maybe this is something from a not from a security mindset I'm telling, from a developer mindset I'm telling, that it is good to know our own apps. Because I know, like, even you've been developer, you've added developer in your name itself. So you try and understand, you explain it to me. A lot of times I don't know everything, so you explain it to me, and I try and understand it from a security mindset. So you know it, that's why you were able to explain me. If you don't know your package, how can you explain it to somebody, right?
Yeah.
So it's important to have
totally
documentation
true.
ready.
Yeah, Yeah, and know what you're using. Like, do the due diligence. I'm actually writing a blog post about that at this very minute. Well, not right now, but earlier today I was. So yeah, and it's a really good point. Like, there's so many times where, as a dev, like, you've got all these pressures coming in. You know, you've got sprint ending, you've got delivery dates, you've got clients jumping up and down saying, "Where is it? And why isn't it read yet?" Like, you've got all these external pressures of the usual SDLC, like, but just take the moment to understand what you're including in your app and what you're building it on. So always really important. Should we have a look through the Vun list for today or for this week? Oops, let me close some tabs here.
Let's
All right,
go ahead and try.
So interestingly, there's some now starting to appear, and this is kind of on the back of some recent events too. And we didn't get a chance to talk about it much last week, but there's some Linux ones appearing now, which is kind of getting a bit scary, into a brand new category we've literally just launched called unmanaged C and C++. So this is early stage for C and C++ scanning, which is kind of really cool and exciting. So I've actually got a to-do app, a Goof demo to-do app coming for this. It's not quite ready yet, but when it is, we'll do some demos. But there's one in this list for today that I wanted to highlight because I've seen this appear recently. There it is. One of my favorites. And actually, I think we talked about it maybe the first or the second episode of in this week, VulnDB, but Vim. Now, I really like Vim. I'm just going to say that now. And I know there's a bit of a divide amongst communities about this, but I mean, Vim's fundamental. And there's another vulnerability appearing in, I wonder if it'll come up with, it didn't, but with buffer overflow there we go. Red Hat Bugzilla's actually raised this one. What can you tell us about buffer overflow, Vandana, while that's loading?
This needs a drum roll. I'll tell you why. See, a buffer overflow happens when there's a huge amount of data that is being flooded to the memory. Like right now, I heard from someone yesterday. So if I'm eating 2 plates food every day, I can eat half a plate. It's fine for me, even though I'm going to be hungry. I can eat 1 plate. 2 plate is like something which is sufficient for me, which will be like filling. But then if I get 3 plates, can I have it? No, there will be issues in there, right? I can only eat certain amount of food. I have certain capacity. But what happened with buffer overflow? Uh, there are certain conditions that exist, and a program starts
Not sure if that's my internet or Vandana's. Let me just check mine. Doesn't seem to be mine. Well, I'm sure Vandana will be back in a moment. Until then, I was just taking a look through the source code, kind of going off what Vandana was saying, that buffer overflows when too much information comes in and the application isn't basically able to handle it, which is essentially the change that's come in.
Were you able to hear me, Steve?
No, kind of got stuck. You had a buffer overflow moment.
Oh my God! Yes. I'll explain again.
that was a great example of a buffer overflow using the internet.
Oh my God! Yes, I'm so sorry about the internet today. Okay, so I'll tell you again. So a buffer overflow happens when a program attempts to put more and more data into the buffer. Like people just keep feeding me with the information. Now, what will happen if I cannot handle that? Either the program would crash, or the data would get corrupted, or I am able to cause the execution of malicious code. Now think of as a time delay queries. I'll tell you funny thing. Where in one of the clients where they said no SQL injection doesn't happen. Oh no this doesn't happen. We started bombarding it with the buffer overflow, and what happened next? The whole user creation system stopped working, and later on it was giving us information. and I got access to the data which I'm not supposed to have access to. So these things can happen with a buffer overflow, and that's why people talk about chaos engineering, talk about these testings which are very relevant, and talk about, again, it leads back to the input validation. It's why one of my favorite things which we should do, wherein we have to have proper input validation. And another important aspect to let you know, in a classic buffer overflow exploit, an attacker can actually send data to the program which it stores in, maybe in a stack. So that stack keeps on overwritten. Now, if that stack keep on overwritten, the data which is actually stored in that stack will be removed. Like we talk about degaussing, we talk about removing the data, we talk about, if you want to discard a drive, we should write some data, some null data to it, so that the data which is there in the drive, nobody can retrieve it, no attacker can retrieve it. So if, let's say, an attacker can overwritten the data, so what will happen? The exact data would be removed. Would you want that? I don't want that to happen. So these things are very, very important to take care, that no buffer overflow attack can happen, and we are actually having the right set of validations for it, and we specify all of these things in the design phase itself. And that's why we need to build our apps secure by design. It is not about application, it is not about network, it is about starting from the exact designing, thinking of it. We have to write it down.
And going through the code, that actually makes sense, because they're doing, well, the additional code for the fix for this is adding more checks to the buffer queue. And for those that aren't familiar with C and C++, well, kind of memory management is something you really have to be mindful of, more than other languages, I think, in C. So this kind of makes sense. I wasn't quick enough with the drum roll, but I am going to do a as far as buffer overflow goes, because it's so dangerous.
Yeah, and I even agree with you. I think when these vulnerabilities come, that I get excited about telling people about it, because at the code level, buffer overflow vulnerabilities usually actually involves a violation wherein anyone can do memory manipulation. And think of, you rightly said, C and C++ do not perform bounds checking, and can easily overwrite the memory, or can easily overwrite the bounds. So we can play around with it. And if you're using C++, please do check that out.
Also, just wanted to mention it too. We recently actually launched scanning, or package hash scanning, fingerprint scanning. Oh, I have to get that right. Such a tongue twister. For C and C++ using Snyk command line, snyk test -- unmanaged. So, and like I said, I'm going to put the link for that into the chat. There's actually a couple of really good write-ups on our blog too, if you wanted to find out more about that. But this is a super new release that we've only just happened. Actually, I think earlier this week. But there's some really good write-ups sort of talking about this a little more. And like I said, we've got some goof apps coming, or a goof app coming, which I'm still working on. If you wanted to have a look a little bit more about that too. Oh yeah, and that's the vulnerability list that we're looking at today. Thanks, Vandana. I did forget that part. So yeah, I had a buffer overflow moment for the show program. Anyway, there's another one I wanted to look at quickly, because it's one that kind of scared me a bit. Where do we go? Oh, here we go. My good old friend PHP. So in the PHP open source ecosystem, in a program called a platform, an app called YALS, or YALS, and essentially this is a URL shortener. Now, why this scares me is I use this. So, but yeah, today I saw a cross-site request forgery come in, which isn't a new one, but it is new for this particular platform. While I load the page, what can you tell us about CSCF? No, CSRF. There we go. I got it right. There's a lot of C's in there, it seems. Bandana.
Yeah. Okay. I'll tell you, CSRF is not a new bug. It is even not part of OWASP top 10 anymore. But it still exists. Now, what it simply says that I can actually do cross-site request forgery. I used to give an example of banks. Now, what happens is that you are logged in your browser. So I'm talking from a browser perspective, and I'm going to share this from the log perspective, the code perspective as well. Now, what happens in CSRF that I can um, I can pull in all the cookies which user is able to see or user has access to. For example, there are 10 different tabs which I have opened. I have hundreds of tabs open, and that's a bad habit of mine. But then there are certain tabs where I'm logged in. Could be bank site, could be a Facebook, Gmail, or Sneak, or anything. Now, there is one application which is vulnerable, which has issues around cross-site scripting. Now, that actually takes all my cookie and send it to a server, a third-party server, an attacker server, because there's a third-party script which is running and taking all my data to somewhere. Now, that person is able to use those cookies, those data, or pictures, or anything. That's called cross-site request forgery. Now, I'm able to leverage the data from here and put it somewhere else. And that's very scary. Most of the applications don't see it anymore, but if you see it, that means the basics are not right. The functions are not properly validated. The data is not being masked properly or output encoded properly. If that's not happening, you would always see these kind of issues. And especially password forgot for functionality, I've seen these CSRFs a lot. And if your application is vulnerable to cross-site scripting, 99% sure that cross-site request forgery would be there. And that's what my experience is.
Yeah.
People have different opinion about it. Yes, Steve.
No, I know, and that's exactly that's exactly what they've done here. Is they're doing a validation on the nonce when an admin tries to, or a registered user goes to log out. Is that wasn't there before, and that was where the cross-site forgery was coming in. Was you could trick an admin user to do a logout, and it would redirect you to another website, and they're going to pinch all your login details. So now there's some more validation around the logout there, which is it's a good way to fix it.
Right. And there's another vulnerability called SSRF, which is server side. Now, this one happens at the client side. The other one happens at the server side. So don't confuse these two. I've heard people getting confused. I've seen people getting confused. So remember, even when we were scrolling through the list of vulnerabilities, we saw SSRF and CSRF both. So let's not confuse these. This is a client side issue. That is a server side issue where server doesn't check or validate. And then the server side request forgery happens. And especially this happens out of bound. Wherein, let's say, if I have a blind SQL injection, I wouldn't even know that there is a blind SQL injection because I am not able to get the data. But if there's a SSRF and I am able to redirect the data to some other application, some other place, and I'm able to scan the ports of the server, or I'm able to fetch some data from the server, then there is a server-side request forgery.
Yeah, and there's that's the SSRF on
Right.
the first page list for the
SSRF.
vulnerabilities. And this is for a Python library, actually an ebook repository. I hadn't seen this one before, but yeah, this is the server side. Yeah. Oh yeah, okay. It's Calibre. I've used Calibre before for ebook library management, but this is the web version. So which makes sense for the SSRF. No, super interesting. And again, like this is just stuff we normally look at when we having our morning coffee, going through the vulnerability list and seeing what's new, because we always find it interesting.
Yeah.
In particular, just to see like which ecosystems, what's appearing where. See, there's been a few Ruby ones lately too. Yeah, always just find it interesting.
And
just
personally, let me tell you, Steve, I am learning a lot. Like, I'm learning a lot about the ecosystems, what vulnerabilities are there. And it's more of for anyone, it's actually a discussion between Steve and I, talking about these vulnerabilities from a developer and a security person mindset. And if you want to be part of the show, if you want to share your perspective, we can keep going on for like days. Like, I and Steve have been there on call for like hours together, and we know we can speak. But if you also want to be part of this show, please do join us. Just DM us on Twitter, LinkedIn, or email us. We would love to get in touch with you and have you on the show as well. Because this is our show, this is everyone's show where we are sharing the data or details about the vulnerabilities. We would love to hear from you as well. And if you have a cool POC about a vulnerability, please do DM us.
Oh, we'd love to. Yeah, we'd
Yes.
totally love to have somebody come on and demo a POC, something new, something maybe involving quantum. I would love to see a quantum vulnerability demo. Maybe a bit too soon. It's coming.
Absolutely.
It's coming. But
Or
yeah,
IoT.
that's all that. I'm totally good. Yeah, there's some of those coming. Oh yes, there's some of those, especially with C and C++. There's a couple of those coming. Anyway, I think that's all we have time for today. Unless you had something you wanted to call out, Vandana, from the list that we're going to talk about. Okay.
Please
Cool.
do fill out the CFP for DevSecCon. We look forward to your papers.
Yeah. Yes, please do. We've had some amazing talks come through already. So again, get those CFPs in or sign up for a ticket. If you didn't want nothing to talk about this time around, sign up for a ticket and see some amazing people share some awesome information. And connect to the community. Like, join us on the Discord as well. Reach out to say hi and tell us some vulnerabilities that you've looked at, some that you've discovered recently. That is all we have time for today. So thank you all for joining us. We'll be back next week. So we'll see you then.